Hi, I want to talk about some games and Unreal talks and things like that. And this discussion, I had it at least from the times of Heroes of Might and Magic version 7, which is basically luckily 10 years ago. So this discussion, it's people likes to revive it forever and ever. And what you'll be surprised, maybe or not, it was that it was written in Unreal Engine 3, but the before games were working, let's say, smooth with the catch. So, for example, this game, Heroes of Might and Magic 6, you will see one part. Maybe you can see it, maybe not. But you can see the starting splashes, but that the game is not recording that. But in fact, on this screen, which you see me, I really can see the game. But also for completeness, I will start a medium map, and I will say to you, you may trust me, you may not trust me, but the frame rates were reasonably good. And what I mean, let's see the exact numbers which I have. I'll pick a 4K screen resolution, and it has a lot of bugs, this engine. And I'll say custom game. Maybe I can see the mouse, it has a bug. See the mouse. Okay. I'm multi-clicking to see um, what it's from, but basically it has 80, 110, 115 frames per second now. It is in a closed area, but it's beyond the point. So remember the 110 frames per second. And if here I'm clicking in the game, in fact, you can see the mouse on my screen. I go into the castle, it has 200 frames per second. So when you cut from that game, which again, it was very buggy, but it has good frame rates, at least on an NVIDIA 5070. Let's migrate the same logic on the Heroes of Might and Magic 7, which was a rushed job. So many people were commenting, look how bad it's Unreal, because it was written in Unreal. And I think at least the OBS can record it. Okay, it says I should install some client scripts. Let's install them. But my assumption is that right now it would record. And let's see the performance. And I'm sure people will say, look, I told you. But so you can see you can record. It's kind of the same settings. So something is better implemented here. Okay, so one part you can see in the menu is 40 frames per second, and it is native 4K with VSync off like before. So the performance dropped 4 times. Let's pick an adventure medium map. I don't know even which to pick. Global cooling. Okay, and start. We will not play any part. But what I want to say that many people when they think Unreal is better is a case like this. They talk. You have a game and it is basically 47, 50 frames per second. And sometimes it gets even worse. Let me be very clear, this is a 4K, it's on a laptop. The screen supports high screen rates, but anyway, the good part is it works with OBS. And okay, and what I think this argument fails is that Unreal doesn't become magically fast as you run it right away. And it's not about an optimization pattern, which I had it also as a talk. But the main reason is that when you go with Unreal, quite often you get more than the game as you think. Like the people have still to optimize it to make it proper. And for the proof, I have another game, also Unreal Engine, but this time the Unreal Engine 3 again is the same version. It looks like people had much more time to optimize it, to not do it as a rush job. They spend, they scale the assets and so on. So even though you maybe can see on the top left the frame rate, it's around 25 frames per second, I would assume they will increase. And this is true, I think, for many reasons. Like right now, I have 110 frames in the menu. I'm not sure if the menu matters. Let me see if I have maybe a big map. So this is a big map. It's kind of one of the worst cases to run. And this one runs clearly at around 100 frames per second. There are some starters has a disabled option to not give the maximum frame rate because otherwise the game locks at around 100 frames per second to it goes back to 60. But this is on a large map. And if you instead of going on a large map, you go to but let's say the new game. Big. It doesn't matter how which level of big. Uh, it doesn't matter how big here, North America. But you could see it loaded fast. Right now it has 150 frames per second, but this is a cinematic. 140, 160, and then it's again stuttering. Sometimes it is because this is how the engine is optimized for working. Um, but anyway, you have over 100 frames per second. And I'll close the game and then I'll talk the conclusions. If it will let me. So, in summary, quite often the Diallo is not the slow part. And even you have the same category of games, and some people say, hey, Heroes is not fair to compare with XCOM or things like that, which is not true. It was simply that, at least as far as I know, the Heroes was very badly mismanaged project. The other part which you might know is that obviously if you put two AIs versus five AIs versus 100 AIs, even the graphics will be quite optimized behind the scenes. Then Unreal can't do magic around that. The other part, which personally I was surprised how well it works. Unreal has many flaws for many kind of integration for largest teams. And this ones maybe they lose some efficiency there, but it's not that much. Especially that most of the work to make the code fast or whatever the game fast is done by putting the right assets, the right animations, the right structure and abstraction. And that one you have to decide it as a developer, as an engineer. And I know this because there is this quite common discussion in other parts in software engineering, which I'm definitely is here. I'm not a game developer, but I have the same discussion with another product which I work, and I will not name it, but it's quite popular. Is that quite often you might design put some fancier graphics, but they take more to load, or you put a nicer tree, but this foliage takes time to process it. And the designer has to know where to put the work, what the CPU would do it. And this is what it's wasted time. And this is on the same discussion which I had it at least for 10 years uh, in the past. And this was true, in fact, I think. I remember, again, being old enough. This discussion was also on the Unreal Engine version 1 versus Quake 2 engine or Quake 3. And there were merits for every of it. But Unreal, what it offers, in fact, it offers a great integration tool for doing games. And as far as I know, there is nothing that succeeds so well with all the tools that goes into it. And It will not even matter eventually if it's 20 frames or 30 frames today, because it will be 60, maybe in the next generation of NVIDIA's GPUs, and assuming it gives this nicer graphics, which quite often they are there. And the last part which I heard it is that discussion which I find it very silly about anti-aliasing. Anti-aliasing is just one tool in your toolbox. That's why many times in many games it lets you choose which anti-aliasing you can. Quite often when there are issues with stuttering or things like that, it's also just one tool. People have to compile shaders. And I heard it also the criticism, hey, but if you put to compile shaders to wait half an hour, probably if you have a too slow machine. But that's the point. Ideal comes with a lot of programs which can make your games to look shiny. If it takes half an hour, you'll have to spend that time because you want your things to look shiny in the game. And if you compile it, it looks shiny ahead of time. And if not, you'll say it's stuttering. It's a catch-22. But it's not a bug of Unreal to give you more features out of the box, more shaders, to give you every shiny type of material you might want or need in your design views. And this is a strength, in fact. It's not a weakness, right?